She was just a girl with worn-out shoes and a second-hand backpack, wandering the halls of Brooksville High like a ghost no one wanted to see. They called her worthless. They filmed her tears for laughs. They made sure she knew, every single day, that she didn't belong. That's when life was supposed to break her, crush her spirit, and leave her in the dust of forgotten dreams. But something inside her refused to die. Years later, when that golden invitation arrived at her door, dripping with false politeness and thinly veiled mockery, she held it in her hands and smiled. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she had become someone they could never have imagined. And when that helicopter descended onto the emerald lawn of Greenwood Heights Country Club, slicing through the sky with a thunderous roar, the entire crowd froze in stunned silence. If this story speaks to your heart, please hit that subscribe button right now. Your support means everything to us and helps us bring you more powerful stories of courage, redemption, and hope. Stay with us until the very end. And if this moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Her name was Emma Vale, and she had spent her teenage years invisible, or worse, visible only as a target. Brooksville High was a battlefield disguised as a school, where cruelty wore designer clothes and popularity was currency. Emma's family struggled to keep the lights on, let alone afford the latest trends. Her mother worked double shifts at the diner. Her father had passed when she was young, and Emma learned early that survival meant staying small, staying quiet, and never drawing attention. But no matter how hard she tried to blend into the walls, they found her. Girls like Claire, Becca, and the rest of the inner circle treated Emma like entertainment, a living punchline to their endless jokes. They mocked her thrift store jeans, laughed at her homemade lunches, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Some days, Emma would sit alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, sketching in a battered notebook, dreaming of a life beyond the suffocating walls of that school. The only person who ever showed her kindness was Mr. Daniels, the school janitor, an older man with kind eyes who would pause his work to remind her that she was stronger than she believed. Graduation came like a bitter release, a door closing on years of pain, but opening into an uncertain void. Emma left Brooksville with no friends, no money, and no plan, just a burning determination to prove that her life could be more than what they said it would be. She moved to the city with nothing but a duffel bag and hope, working 3 jobs to survive, sleeping on couches, skipping meals, saving every dollar. At night, she taught herself business, marketing, finance, anything she could learn online while the world slept. She refused to let exhaustion win. She refused to let their voices echo louder than her own heartbeat. Then one autumn afternoon, fate intervened in the form of a small candle shop tucked between 2 towering buildings. Emma had wandered in looking for a cheap birthday gift and walked out with something far more valuable, a chance. The shop belonged to an elderly woman named Margaret Wells, a widow who had poured her heart into her business but was losing the battle against time and debt. Margaret saw something in Emma that no one else ever had: potential, fire, and an artist's soul wrapped in survivor's armor. Within months, Emma breathed new life into the failing shop. She redesigned the branding, created stunning new candle collections infused with natural scents and elegant packaging, and built an emotional connection with customers through storytelling and authenticity. The business didn't just survive, it thrived. Orders poured in from across the state, then the country. Margaret watched in awe as the girl she had taken a chance on transformed everything she touched. 2 years later, when Margaret passed peacefully in her sleep, she left the entire company to Emma, a final gift from a woman who believed in second chances. Emma honored that trust by expanding the brand into Serenity and Company, a global luxury wellness empire worth millions. Her candles, oils, and home fragrances graced the shelves of high-end boutiques, 5-star hotels, and airport lounges worldwide. The girl who once had nothing had built everything with her own 2 hands, fueled by pain that had turned into power. So when a reunion invitation arrived in her mailbox, Emma didn't tear it up or throw it away. She sat with it for a long time, feeling the weight of old wounds and new strength colliding in her chest. She knew exactly why they had sent it. The polite wording couldn't hide the truth. They wanted to see if she was still broken, still small, still the girl they could laugh at. They expected her to show up defeated, or not show up at all. But Emma wasn't that girl anymore. She had walked through fire and emerged not as ash, but as steel. She decided to go, not for them, but for herself. Not to prove anything, but to close a chapter that had been left painfully open for too long. She wanted to stand in that room and feel nothing but peace. She wanted to look at the faces that once haunted her nightmares and see them for what they truly were. Just people, flawed and frightened in their own ways. And so, she made a call, arranged the helicopter, and prepared to return to the place that had tried to destroy her, this time on her own terms. The day of the reunion arrived with brilliant sunshine and a sky so clear it felt like the universe itself was watching. Greenwood Heights Country Club sprawled across acres of manicured lawns, pristine gardens, and marble fountains, the kind of place that screamed wealth and exclusivity. Former classmates arrived in luxury cars, dressed in designer suits and cocktail dresses, already falling back into old roles and hierarchies. Claire stood near the entrance with her usual entourage, flipping her hair and scanning the crowd for anyone worth impressing. Becca checked her reflection in a compact mirror, adjusting her lipstick with the same self-absorbed precision she had perfected in high school. The boys who had once ruled the hallways now stood in clusters, trading exaggerated stories about their mediocre careers and failing marriages. Everyone was performing, pretending, clinging to the illusion that they were still the people they had been 10 years ago. But then, in the distance, a sound began to grow, a deep, rhythmic thumping that cut through the chatter and forced heads to turn skyward. The helicopter appeared on the horizon like a scene from a movie, sleek and black against the brilliant blue sky, growing larger and louder with every passing second. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. The entire crowd stood frozen, staring upward in collective disbelief. No one had expected this. No one had planned for this. The helicopter circled once, a slow, deliberate arc that seemed to draw out the suspense, before beginning its descent onto the open lawn. Wind whipped through the crowd, scattering napkins and ruffling perfectly styled hair. Dust and grass flew in swirling patterns as the machine touched down with a controlled grace. The blade slowed, the engine's roar faded to a hum, and then silence. Everyone waited, hearts pounding, eyes glued to the door. When it finally opened, the woman who stepped out didn't look like someone returning to face her past. She looked like someone who had already conquered it. Emma emerged in a flowing dress of soft ivory that caught the sunlight and shimmered like liquid silk. Her blonde hair cascaded in effortless waves over her shoulders, framing a face that radiated calm confidence and quiet power. She wore no mask of arrogance, no armor of bitterness. She simply was. Her presence filled the space without demanding it. She moved with the grace of someone who had nothing left to prove, someone who had walked through hell and come out the other side, holding her own light. The crowd parted instinctively, like water around a stone, as she stepped onto the grass and began walking toward the entrance. Some people gasped. Others whispered her name in disbelief. A few looked down, suddenly unable to meet her eyes, as memories they had tried to bury came flooding back. Claire's face drained of color. Becca's perfectly painted smile faltered and cracked. The boys who had once mocked Emma's clothes now tugged nervously at their ties, suddenly feeling small in their expensive suits. Emma walked past them all without hesitation, her gaze steady and clear. She wasn't here to gloat. She wasn't here to lecture or shame. She was here to reclaim a piece of herself, to stand in the place that had once made her feel worthless and realize that it held no power over her anymore. Inside the event hall, the atmosphere was thick with tension and unspoken regret. The walls were decorated with banners and photo collages from their high school days, frozen moments of laughter, friendships, and cruelty captured in glossy prints. Emma moved through the space like a woman walking through a museum of her own past, observing but no longer touched by it. She paused at the refreshment table, accepted a glass of sparkling water from a stunned server, and continued toward the center of the room where a massive display of yearbook photos hung on a decorative wall. Her eyes scanned the images until she found it, a picture of herself, younger, smaller, sitting alone on a bench outside the school, her face turned away from the camera. She stared at that image for a long moment, not with sadness, but with something deeper: gratitude, respect, love for the girl who had survived. Behind her, the room had gone almost silent. People watched from a distance, unsure of what to do or say. Some felt the weight of their past actions pressing down on their chests like stones. Others felt jealousy, confusion, or a strange mix of admiration and shame. Claire finally approached, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her face a carefully composed mask of friendliness. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to pretend they had always been friends. But Emma turned and met her gaze with such calm clarity that the words died in Claire's throat. Emma didn't need her apology. She didn't need her validation. She had spent years building herself from the ground up, and nothing Claire or anyone else said could add to or take away from that. Emma smiled softly, a smile that held no anger, only peace, and walked past her. She moved toward the open terrace doors, where sunlight spilled in like a golden river, and stepped outside. The fresh air filled her lungs, and for the first time in years, she felt truly, completely free. The terrace overlooked the sweeping landscape of Greenwood Heights, a view so beautiful it almost seemed unreal, like a painting hung in a gallery to remind people what perfection could look like. Emma stood at the railing, her hands resting lightly on the cool stone, her eyes tracing the rolling hills and distant trees. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle breeze lifting her hair, and the quiet hum of life around her. Inside, the reunion continued, but it felt like a world away now, a place she had visited but no longer belonged to. She had come here with one purpose: to face her past and let it go. And standing here now, beneath the open sky, she realized she had done exactly that. She wasn't the broken girl they remembered. She wasn't defined by their cruelty or their laughter. She was Emma Vale, a woman who had built an empire from nothing, who had turned pain into purpose, and who had learned that her worth was never determined by the people who tried to make her feel small. Footsteps approached from behind, soft and hesitant. Emma turned to see Mr. Daniels, the old janitor from Brooksville High, now retired and walking with cane. His face lit up when he saw her, his eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. He had been invited to the reunion as a gesture of nostalgia, but Emma suspected he came because he still believed in kindness, even in places where it had been scarce. They embraced, and for a moment, Emma felt like that scared teenager again, but this time, she wasn't afraid. Mr. Daniels looked at her with pride, the kind of pride that only someone who had witnessed the struggle could truly feel. He told her he always knew she would rise, that he saw it in her eyes even when she couldn't see it herself. They talked for a while, sharing stories of the years that had passed, and when he finally left, Emma felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the sun. He had been the only light in her darkest days, and seeing him again reminded her that kindness, even in small doses, could change everything. As the afternoon wore on, more people approached Emma, some with genuine curiosity, others with thinly veiled attempts at redemption. A few offered awkward apologies, stumbling over words they should have said years ago. Emma listened to each one with grace, accepting their words without clinging to them. She understood that people carried their own regrets, their own pain, and that forgiveness wasn't something she owed them, but something she could choose to give for her own peace. She didn't absolve them of their cruelty, but she also didn't hold on to the anger that had once threatened to consume her. She had learned that letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to let the past dictate the future. Some people would never understand the damage they had caused, and that was their burden to carry, not hers. Emma had spent too many years carrying weight that didn't belong to her. Today, she was setting it down. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the terrace, Emma knew it was time to leave. She walked back through the event hall one last time, her footsteps echoing softly against the marble floor. People watched her go, some with admiration, some with envy, some with the quiet realization that they had missed their chance to know someone extraordinary. Emma didn't look back. She stepped outside, where the helicopter waited, its blades beginning to spin once more. The pilot nodded as she climbed aboard, and within moments, they were lifting off, rising above the mansion, above the people, above the memories. Emma looked down at Greenwood Heights one last time, seeing it grow smaller and smaller until it was just another place on the map, a place that no longer held power over her. She closed her eyes and felt the weight she had carried for 10 years finally lift, released into the wind, scattered into the sky. She had returned not as the girl they broke, but as the woman who rebuilt herself. And that was the greatest victory of all. The helicopter soared higher, cutting through the clouds, carrying Emma toward a future she had built with her own hands. Below, the reunion continued, but it no longer mattered. The people who had once defined her world were now just faces in a crowd, strangers playing roles in a story that was no longer hers. Emma's story was bigger now, brighter, filled with purpose and passion and the kind of peace that only comes from truly knowing yourself. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who sat alone on that bench, the one who cried herself to sleep, the one who believed she would never be enough. And she whispered a quiet thank you to that girl for holding on, for surviving, for refusing to give up even when the world told her she should. That girl had carried her to this moment, and Emma would spend the rest of her life honoring that strength. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, comment, share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their past doesn't define their future. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that inspire, heal, and prove that kindness always wins. Before you go, comment, "I believe in second chances." Emma smiled, opened her eyes, and watched the horizon stretch endlessly before her, knowing that the best chapters of her life were still waiting to be written.